Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Oh man. It would have actually been difficult in a way to make this movie be even worse than Jurassic World, but somehow the studio managed to do it. And even though Dominion and Rebirth are both dumpster fires, I would say that Fallen Kingdom is the worst Jurassic film. Just the sheer amount of contrivance and lack of common sense in this film is just baffling. The very premise of the film, the volcano eruption, is a huge contrivance to begin with. Now, a volcano erupts around every 5,000 years, so it's extremely convenient for the movie that the volcano just happens to erupt. If the volcano never erupted, there would be no plot. Or actually, there would be. The film could absolutely have had the exact same plot, but just without the volcano eruption. But even with the volcano erupting, the plot doesn't make sense. The movie wants us to think that if the dinosaurs are not saved, they will go extinct again. But if you remember the other Jurassic Park films, you immediately realize that's just not true. Because the island that's about to be destroyed by the volcano is Isla Nublar, the same island where the original Jurassic Park took place. But Site B, where the dinosaurs were raised, is on Isla Sorna. And there is no volcano on Isla Sorna, so the dinosaurs are not going extinct. And if we also take St. Hubert Island from Jurassic World Rebirth into account, there is another dinosaur island out there. Though I will give the writers of Fallen Kingdom the benefit of the doubt, and pin that issue solely on Rebirth. But let's say that Isla Sorna didn't exist. The dinosaurs still wouldn't be going extinct. InGen would have the genetic codes absolutely stored somewhere. And the fact that Lockwood actually had a lab in his mansion, which was sufficient enough to create the Indoraptor, begs the question as to why doesn't InGen or someone else just create a new Jurassic Park? Oh yeah, that's because people are bored of dinosaurs. Thanks, Jurassic World. But the main point being that this volcano would not make the dinosaurs go extinct. But before we can get to see the volcano, we have to first go to the Lockwood Manor. If you saw the movie for the first time in cinemas, like I did back in 2018, you might have been like, oh yeah, Lockwood. Of course I remember. He was mentioned in Jurassic Park as Hammond's partner. Except Lockwood was never mentioned at all. Lockwood was completely invented out of thin air, just to mirror Hammond from The Lost World. Which is interesting in retrospect, that the plot of Fallen Kingdom mirrors The Lost World, and Rebirth slightly mirrors Jurassic Park 3. But Lockwood is just spawned out of nowhere, just to get Hammond nostalgia. Also something worthy to note as well, Lockwood's edition contradicts Hammond's dying wish, and returns to The Lost World's established continuity. But that contradicts Jurassic World, where Hammond's dying wish was to have the park be built again. But I honestly blame Jurassic World for this. But it's like the Jurassic trilogy wants both Jurassic Park Hammond and the Lost World Hammond to maximize nostalgia, even though they are two completely different people. Moving on to Isla Nublar, there actually aren't that many issues here. Except the fact that Owen should be dead. Owen is this close to the lava here, but he's completely fine. The dry leaves on the ground would actually catch fire and burn Owen even before the lava would reach him. And let me remind you of what happened to Anakin when he was near lava. But I guess Henry injected Owen with the good old plot armor genome after it worked so well with the Indominus, so he moved on to human trials. Of course, the Baryonyx also somehow manages to survive lava falling on its face, but he already has the plot armor genome, so it's fine. Now that we're back at Lockwood's Manor, the movie decides to go absolutely bonkers. Instead of killing Owen and Claire, they're just left in a cage. But what's extremely convenient and doesn't make any sense is that the manor doesn't have enough security for the Pachycephalosaurus. Surely Henry Wu would be aware that basic stone walls can't hold the Pachycephalosaurus. But thanks to the Pachycephalosaurus, Owen and Claire managed to escape. But then, in the dinosaur auction, the auctioneer guy, Mr. Eversole, says something that I honestly missed the first few times I watched this film. When introducing the Indoraptor to the audience, he calls the Indoraptor, and I quote, "the perfect weapon for the modern age, built for combat." Now that statement is of course nonsensical, because guns kill dinosaurs. Or do they? But the next statement caught my attention even more upon rewatch. And again, I quote, "tactical responses more acute than any human soldier." That means that the Indoraptor, by the movie's words, is so effective in combat that in a tactical sense, it outperforms a human soldier, which is beyond nonsense. You're saying that the Indoraptor would tactically outsmart a human soldier in combat. How? Because from what we see later in the film, the Indoraptor is actually not smart at all. But I think it's time to address the T-Rex in the room. Why in the world would you use a laser targeting system that requires you to aim at your target to send the Indoraptor to attack that target when you can just shoot the target yourself because you already have it in your sights? You don't need an Indoraptor, you just need to shoot. But then, when we get to how the Indoraptor actually managed to escape, the movie's internal logic decides to continue on the nonsense track. So the Indoraptor manages to escape, because the hunter guy, Wheatley, has arrived to collect his paycheck from capturing and transporting the dinosaurs. However, wouldn't he have been paid already? I mean, he did his job, the dinosaurs are in cages, and all he needs to do is take the money and go home. Because now it's like he just stood around and waited for hours before going to ask Miles for his money. The film simply pauses Wheatley so that he can appear at a moment when he is almost entirely alone with the Indoraptor. Now, Fallen Kingdom tries to be like Jurassic Park here, by having setup and payoff, but it doesn't work here. Wheatley was established to collect dinosaur teeth as his hobby, which is why he now wants to collect the Indoraptor's teeth. That, in and of itself, is a weak foundation, but I will disregard that, because there are bigger issues that occur here. First of all, the cage doesn't even have a lock or any kind of safety mechanism. And second, Wheatley actually tranquilizes the Indoraptor with not one, but two tranq darts. I like how in Jurassic World, the capture team didn't even try to use tranquilizers. But then in Fallen Kingdom, when they do get used, they just don't work. Also, something worthy to note is that Blue's cage can be opened just as easily. I guess all of Miles' money went into buying Henry's plot armor genome, so that he couldn't invest in basic locks. But after the Indoraptor has escaped, Owen, Claire, and Maisie encounter Miles, and it is here that something rather interesting is revealed about Maisie. She is actually a clone of Lockwood's daughter, instead of being Lockwood's actual granddaughter. Cloning dinosaurs is one thing, but cloning people? Now that's a whole different thing entirely. And actually, cloning people would have sparked a ton of great philosophical and ethical discussions between so many different characters, but no. Introducing human cloning is an insane addition to the Jurassic universe, but it has very little practical implications for Fallen Kingdom, except to have Maisie release the dinosaurs because she was created just like them. Before we get to the ending, we get to see what tactical response is more acute than any human soldier actually means, as we are shown the Indoraptor's brilliant strategies. So Claire's leg is stuck under a tree, and it's at an angle that the Indoraptor manages to claw into it. But instead of clawing into Claire's leg repeatedly and rendering her unable to move, the Indoraptor starts to chase after Maisie. Maisie then goes to hide in her room, and the Indoraptor actually went to the roof of the mansion. But instead of going into the forests and being free, it decides to deliberately approach Maisie slowly to try to scare her as much as possible. If the Spinosaurus hunting the humans was somewhat believable, then this is just absolutely unbelievable. It's like the Indoraptors from a Stephen King novel, like it needs to scare its prey before eating it. But just as the Indoraptor is about to eat Maisie, Owen bursts through the door and shoots the Indoraptor 3 times, and then it dies and the movie ends. reality can sometimes be so disappointing. The Indoraptor just shakes off the gunshots from an assault rifle, and then Owen is actually about to die. But then, out of nowhere, Blue saves Owen from being eaten. A huge payoff once again. But this time the movie actually took time to establish it more. But then we again get to see the tactical response is more acute than any human soldier in action, as the Indoraptor fights Blue in Maisie's room. But the Indoraptor is constantly gunning for Maisie, even though Blue is viciously attacking it. Surely the most basic tactical response is to focus on the current biggest threat to you. The Indoraptor leaves itself open to Blue's attacks a couple of times, in order to go after Maisie. Even though if it's solely focused on the 1v1 against Blue, it would win. Sure, Blue can put up a good fight, but the Indoraptor is double its size. But even though both Blue and the Indoraptor throw each other around the room, and bite and claw each other, neither of them sustain any wounds. Both Blue and the Indoraptor should be visibly bleeding by this point, but they both seem fine. I guess this is what happens when two dinosaurs who have Henry's plot armor genome fight one another. But because the Indoraptor is evil, the plot armor genome can only protect it for so long. And then we finally get to the end of the film with Maisie releasing the dinosaurs because they are clones just like her, and now dinosaurs will be spread all over the world. Except they wouldn't be. If we give the film the best benefit of the doubt, Maisie released over 200 dinosaurs into the wild. But some of those are little compies, who are not going to be a problem at all. The biggest issues would be the T-Rex and the Ceratosaurus. But we're pretending that these dinosaurs will just survive in the wild and not be captured or killed by the police, or just ordinary people trying to defend themselves. Because they're not like Godzilla. They can't survive missiles. Or I guess Henry Wu gave them all the plot armor genome, so they will be just fine. Also, something worthy to note as well is that Ian Malcolm is back in the Jurassic universe. But he's not part of the plot, and his speech about the fact that if humanity is not careful, dinosaurs might outlive humans is absolute nonsense. But I was thinking, is this Fallen Kingdom trying to stay within the continuity of Jurassic Park 3? Where Alan said that the velociraptors would have become the dominant species if they had survived. Because that nonsense from Jurassic Park 3 actually helps Fallen Kingdom try to justify why the dinosaurs would be a danger to humans, when realistically they wouldn't be. I guess out of the few positives in Fallen Kingdom, Owen's bond with Blue got more setup, and honestly, Henry Wu isn't too bad in this film, as he's not as incompetent as in Jurassic World. And he even says something interesting at the auction that I glossed over because I was so preoccupied by the tactical response is more acute than any human soldier thing. But Henry actually doesn't want to sell the Indoraptor, because he fears that will allow others to make their own hybrid dinosaurs. So Henry wants to monopolize the hybrid dinosaur market? But yeah, Fallen Kingdom is a really terrible movie, and I would even say that it's a 1 out of 10. Because there are even more issues, like the Mosasaurus escape. And the entire film just doesn't make any sense.